Welcome back. The Bartles had just heard about the blue chip collapse. What did you do, Judy?
Well, hang on, let me think. What did we do? Panic.
Went into shock.
We went into shock.
Because it was $3,000 on one loan, $1,025 on the other one, and $989 on the other one.
We realised that we would have to find $5,000 a month plus the expenses for the apartment in Auckland, and we knew that it was on our pension. It's just an impossibility.
We'd only heard a few months earlier that the procurement fee that was paying us $451 had to be ceased because there were no funds to back it up. So this was a total disaster. In fact, we had $5,000 a month to pay. We had all the payments to pay, but we weren't going to receive an income at all. That was absolutely horrendous.
So tell us how you felt.
So absolutely devastated that I considered suicide. I was going to gas myself in the car, and at the same time Bruce, he decided without each other's knowledge that he would slash his wrists because he'd been a meat inspector.
I said to God, I said, I've been a meat inspector for 28 years, I've got a very sharp knife, I'll go and slash my wrist. Oh, this is not good enough. And do you know what he said to me? He said, I did both of mine for you, why bother?
And we also decided we'd both have to get a job and try and raise the $5,000.
So I went out milking cows.
And it was nearly 500 cows.
Nearly 500 cows, and it took about 3 hours to milk them, and I was going to get $50 a milking, and I could only last about 5 milkings, and I had to quit. I couldn't do it.
He was
I
shaking.
was too old. At 69, I couldn't milk cows like I was when I was 19.
It was just too much for you, wasn't it?
It was too much.
And I hadn't got a job, and then we realised there's no way we can raise $5,000 a month for 31 years when we'd be 100
Yes.
and
in a retirement
98.
home.
Goodness me.
When something like this happens, your mind goes into a bit of a turmoil, and you have got no answers, but you've got all the questions. Fortunately, we kept a sane head and responded to Ellis Law, who said if anybody needed assistance, to give them $2,000 and they would do their best. Sometime later, my neighbour came over and said to me, he said, he's been a Christian for a long time, and he said, I don't feel comfortable about this. He said, there's something wrong. He said, would you give me your papers to have a look at? So I said, yeah, I'm quite happy to do that. So I gave him a bundle of papers because I said they don't mean a lot to me. He went through them, and he came back to me 3 days later, and he said, God has been speaking to me, and he said, I'm sure that your application papers have got something wrong with them. And I thought to myself, well, how would he know? However, I saw the sincerity in his face, and I said, well, anything's a go. So I emailed Tasman Mortgages, and they sent back some application papers that the lady said were the ones that we had signed, that they were the ones who were responsible for us having a loan. What she didn't say was that there were 2 papers included which did not have our initials on the alterations made to the documents that this lady sent to me.
It's not our writing. One person, I think one person's done the whole lot. But we were retired. We filled in we were retired, and it says self-employed investor for 12 months on that, which we certainly weren't. I couldn't sleep. I had to go to the doctor, and I had to go on sleeping pills. I just could not sleep. My mind was in a whirl, and I'd be awake all night if I didn't have them.
Bruce, how did you become involved with Paul Dale and then become the test case?
I remember standing in our kitchen one day, and I said to Judy, I said, there's about 3,000 people in this business, and I don't know whether we're number 1 or number 299 or right in the middle. I said, there's so many people and there's so many confusing reports. I just don't know where we stand. It's absolutely awful. But then an unusual thing happened. We got an email from Tom Carwood, who was an owner in one of the Madison apartments where we were, and I'd already asked him earlier about who was paying the body corp fees, and strangely, he wrote back that night, or sometime later actually, and said, would I ring Paul Dale at 9 o'clock on Monday morning? And we couldn't wait for Monday morning to come around, and sure enough, we phoned him up, and he answered the phone. And so we explained our story to him, because he said, well, what's your story? We did. We told him. He said, it sounds so serious. Would you come down to Auckland tomorrow at 11 o'clock? Daniel Groven and I will go through your papers together, and we will assess it from there. We were there for an hour and a quarter. They fiddled through all the pages. They wrote on some, they didn't on others. And then without any explanation, he just said, we're going to make you the test case for New Zealand, for all the blue chip people, because you have fraud in your papers. How excited we were, and on the way down we had a little prayer on the steps. I remember it quite clearly. We were so excited. We were going to be the test case. The real work began. Then we had to go and write up an affidavit, and that was difficult because we couldn't remember everything, because our diary wasn't particularly good, so we relied heavily on things that we'd done, all the papers we'd signed, and that's how we got to the situation of being the test case for all of the people in blue chip. Just a few days before we went to see Paul Dale, God actually spoke to me out in the garden, and he said, the battle is not yours, it's the Lord's. And I knew that came from 2 Chronicles 20. And when I looked at that, there were 3 groups of people outside Judah, and they were all ready to attack them. And when Paul Dale said to me, we're going to take Jonathan Matthias, TML Mortgages and GE to court, the 3 matched up so beautifully, and I was so excited.
So what was the court experience like?
At age 69, to be in the High Court was quite a challenging exercise. However, we coped fairly well, I thought. The people all introduced themselves, and surprise, surprise, was when Tasman Mortgages introduced themselves, and they asked for leave of absence because they were in liquidation. So I thought to myself, oh well, there's one gone already.
And for you, Judy?
Oh, I was really nervous because I don't really like doing things in public very much at all, and it was quite frightening to be questioned, stand up and be questioned by a QC when the only times we'd ever been to court before was to be on jury service, and when we adopted our 2 children we had to go to court, and that was it. So it was a frightening experience because we had the media there. They had a section, and we had all the lawyers and the judge at the front, and the people who were the spectators, I suppose you'd call them, as well. And of course we had, amongst them we had GE representatives, private investigators, and all sorts of people like that. And it was very challenging for me. Bruce was questioned for 2 days, and I wasn't allowed to be in court in that time, so I had to sit in the cold corridor. And then later on, that was in case, I heard something I shouldn't have heard because they wanted to hear me separately, and I probably had nearly a day, 3/4 of a day in court myself.
Bruce, can you show us an original of your loan application?
Yes, that's the one there. We signed that on June the 23rd, 2006. When I asked TML to send me the documents that got these loans, this is what came in the mail. This is a false application, and I will go through some of the details. Firstly, it's not written in our handwriting. The other thing is that the phone number has been corrected. Judy is not listed as being female or male. The important thing is that there's 9 years mentioned here, how long at this address, and that's wrong. The IRD number is absolutely crucial to this. There's no ID number, both on my side nor Judy's, which correlate our names to anything. We've been listed as your employer is self-employed. We have been retired since 2003, and we've been called an investor, and according to the IRD we're retired. We've been apparently employed as an investor for 12 months. Now we go down to the accountant's name. There's no accountant nor details. So the interesting thing is this loan has been approved in our application, which we didn't write, and as you will see, we were never given an opportunity to see the details that have been altered, and our initials do not appear at the bottom of the page. This means that GE have loaned us all that money without an IRD number, so we could have done anything with that money, and also we don't have an accountant, so we could have gone off for an overseas trip. Who knows?
Could you explain to us the details you have on page 2?
Page 2 actually is completely shocking, because they've loaned us $639,000 on a document that has no income. It has no income. And that's absolutely appalling when you think that we were not even given a democratic right to look at this document and agree to the changes. Down here you'll find no initials, so we never ever saw it. So they loaned this money on a false document, and we can't accept it. Those loans do not have any bearing on us at all, because the details are not
Different.
there the same.
No, and they've filled in part of the original one.
Yeah.